Да, тебе командир, мы очень любим помочь. Да. Окей, обязательно, пожалуйста. Обязательно. Можно попросить? Просят толпу отогнать перед кассой. Да. Вот сюда никто не подходит больше. Антон! Коридор!
Anton, give him the corridor. And you see the first of the crew members has been removed from the Soyuz capsule. This is Anton Shkaplerov, who was the commander of the Soyuz for its landing. He was seated in the center seat and as such was the first to be taken out. Next up, of course, will be his crewmates, Anatoly Ivanishin and Dan Burbank. And these chairs are set up for the crew members to sit in as they go through some post-landing medical tests. Make it a little easier on them since they've been living outside of gravity for the past 5.5 months. They've been back on Earth for about 15 minutes now since they landed at 6:45 a.m. Central Time, and that's 2:45 p.m. Kazakhstan time.
Готов по первому? Леш, скажи этим группам, проводил там да, 3 комбир там лежат, исполнили. Попробуй рядом, да? В ногах. Вот здесь вот он снимает. Значит, ты же не вставай. Лёх, я перевожу камеру. Камеру. Значит, ты войдешь. Артем же идет. Все, выкрутил. Вот часовой мат. Ну, прикинь, от тебя. Чем я давай там разная сумка. Рюкзак. Серега, сегодня рюкзак. Давай. У вас сигнал, тут нормально идет? Близко дороже. Операцию удобно мерить. 126 на 86. Командир. Анисимов! Анисимов! Ты кричишь? Вон, с другой стороны. Антенна. Никого?
Team here on the ground still working to get Shkaplerov's crewmates out of the Soyuz capsule. They landed just a little over 15 minutes ago at 6:45 a.m. Central Time. And among the group of people here at the landing is NASA spokesperson Rob Navius, who's called in to give us a report. Can you hear us, Rob?
Yes, I can, Brandy. Our helicopter landed just a few minutes ago. What began in a blinding snowstorm in Baikonur back on November 14th with the launch of these three crew members ends on a very balmy early evening here on the steppe of Kazakhstan. As you said, the Soyuz TMA-22, the last in the line of the older version of this venerable spacecraft, lying on its side, looking almost none the worse for wear. It survived the heat and the rigors of reentry in excellent shape. It landed on its side, which is not unusual for a Soyuz spacecraft. It is covered on one side by what appears to be straw. The straw is the early spring grass that will be sprouting through within a matter of weeks here in Kazakhstan. The team of Energia specialists and the search and recovery force personnel are in the process of extracting the other two crew members. As you mentioned, Anton Shkaplerov, the Soyuz commander, is resting comfortably in his chaise lounge, if you will, sort of a reclining chair. He's covered with a blanket, although it is extremely warm out here this afternoon. Temperatures in the mid-70s. Shkaplerov flashing a thumbs-up sign, appearing in good shape. None the worse for wear, as we said, as work continues to extract the other two crew members. The critical flight surgeon personnel, including the lead flight surgeon for Dan Burbank, Dr. Smith Johnston, is at the hatchway of the Soyuz spacecraft waiting to see his crew member extracted after 165 days in space, 163 days aboard the International Space Station. Randy?
Thanks so much, Rob. It looks like it was a beautiful landing. We could tell even here on TV, so I'm sure it was great to see in person.
One Russian search and recovery forces member who I have known for some years now shook my hand as we got out of the helicopter and simply said in broken English, "We nailed it." This was a bullseye landing for sure. The first helicopters landed literally within a minute or two of the Soyuz spacecraft resting on its side, and they began the process of opening the top hatch to the Soyuz to begin the work to extract the crew. Randy?
And what they're doing here in the reclining seats is some medical tests, and then they'll be taken away to a medical tent. Is that right?
They are working actually to rotate the crew members into the proper orientation so that they can be moved out of their restraint straps and then gently pulled out of the hatchway. We're about to get the second of the three crew members out. This process, whether the Soyuz lands upright or on its side, does take a few minutes to complete, but they're working methodically to extract the crew members and get them into their respective seats, the other two crew members, that is. Typically the left-seater, which would be Anatoly Ivanishin, would be the second one out. We'll see if that is the case here. Sometimes they reverse the order of the second and third crew members.
That looks like what we're seeing.
And it is, in fact, Ivanishин who is pulled out of the Soyuz spacecraft, flashing a broad smile as he is put in his reclining chair, completing his first flight into space, as did his Russian crewmate Anton Shkaplerov. So, yet to come, Dan Burbank, and then the extraction of the crew will be complete. They'll have an opportunity to spend a few minutes in their reclining chairs, getting their sea legs back, if you will, after 5.5 months of weightlessness, before they are hoisted in those chairs and carried about 35, 40 yards away to an inflatable orange medical tent, in which they will be assisted in the removal of their Sokol launch and entry suits to get into more comfortable flight suits. They'll be placed into all-terrain vehicles and driven a short distance to their respective helicopters for the 1-hour, 50-minute flight back to Kustanay, Kazakhstan, just south of the Russian border, for a short welcoming ceremony. Ivanishин and Shkaplerov will board a Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center aircraft to be flown back to Chkalovsky Airfield outside of Star City. There they will be reunited with their families, and they'll be met by top Russian space officials. Dan Burbank, meanwhile, will board a NASA jet that is sitting on the tarmac in Kustanay for the flight back to Houston. Randy?
Thanks, Rob. I'm sure this is all much more pleasant this time around than it was last time in the middle of a snowstorm back in November.
Well, the launch was almost surreal. It was a whiteout, simply put. The conditions on that day were not quite as cold as they were for the launch of Don Pettit, Andrei Kuipers, and the new station commander, Oleg Kononenko, back in December. But nonetheless, it was almost impossible to see the launch pad from a mile away on that day back on November 14th in Baikonur. A year ago, this past March, was the last time I was at a landing site when Scott Kelly returned to Earth after his mission aboard the International Space Station. And although the sun was out that day, the winds were blowing at about 40 knots, and a layer of snow several inches deep created a whiteout in of itself near the spacecraft. On that occasion, the crew were expedited in their suits into their respective helicopters for the flight back to Kustanay. There'll be nothing of that nature required today. The weather is ideal.
Still seems to be moving pretty fast, quickly through the process, though.
This is a well-choreographed procedure that Roscosmos, Energia, and the Rosaeronavigatia Search and Recovery Force personnel undergo. They do train for this quite a bit, and obviously the Soyuz, as I mentioned earlier, a venerable spacecraft with decades of experience, and it's very interesting to see many of the same personnel landing after landing after landing. These are veterans in the art of recovering a crew and getting them on their way back to the staging site in Kazakhstan, from which they will fly back to their respective cities.
How many have you seen, Rob, or been there for?
This, I believe, by my count, would be my 14th landing. They're all different in some way, shape, or form. This, however, just seemed to be one of the most pinpoint, precise landings, according to what we were told a moment ago before I went on the air. The spacecraft landed almost exactly where it had been forecast to. Of course, the search and recovery forces are tracking the Soyuz through a beacon signal, GPS receivers. They had voice contact, and now applause comes up. Dan Burbank, now out of his and being carried to his chair. We're going to walk over to see if we can get closer to him. He is in the process of loosening the helmet that he wore during the descent back to Earth. But all three crew members now out of the Soyuz vehicle. Chief astronaut Peggy Whitson is directly behind Burbank, asking him if he needs anything at the moment. Dr. Smith Johnston, his flight surgeon, and Russian nurses are attending to Burbank as well. This is customary. They're placing the blanket over his legs. He'll have an opportunity to refamiliarize himself to the 1G environment here as the moments move on before they're hoisted back into their medical tent, as I said, to get their flight suits off. And now he's about to receive congratulations from one of the head personnel for the search and recovery forces, making sure if he needs anything. Burbank has simply asked for a bottle of water to wet his whistle, if you will. and there's laughter abounding. He appears to be in very good shape indeed.
All three of the crew members looked like they were in very good spirits.
Yes, and I understand that you enjoyed an opportunity to have video of the descent itself, which is not unprecedented but unusual, and I hope it was a good visual feast for you as well.
It was great. We saw it for a long time before it touched down.
Excellent. Well, Burbank is just answering a few questions from the personnel around him, but Burbank, who became the station commander after an expedited handover with Mike Fossum back at the end of November, and who skillfully and methodically took control of station operations for the ensuing period, called Expedition 30, is now back on Earth and will be back home in Houston by Saturday.
It's quite a whirlwind trip. Thanks so much for calling in, Rob. We really appreciate it.
All right, Brandy, thanks very much. Great job by everybody back there, and we'll be talking to you soon. And I will dial back in case there are anything, if any developments warrant.
That would be great. Thanks so much, and have a good trip yourself.
Thank you, Brandy.
Everything is fine. How was the descent? Thank God everything went nominally. Everything went great, according to the schedule. We all worked as a team. Everybody worked great. How did you cooperate with the rescue team, with the helicopter? Thank you very much for everyone. They found us really fast. And actually we gave them the coordinates, so they knew everything, and they were very fast. So what are your first impressions after the landing? Actually, everything is great, and time flew like one day. Welcome back. Wish you all the best. Thank you.
Soyuz Commander Anton Shkaplerov there giving some comments about how well everything went for their landing today, which took place at 6:45 a.m. Central Time, 2:45 p.m. Kazakhstan time. As you can see, all three members of the crew are now safely out of the capsule, and all wearing big smiles for the most part, seem to be in very good spirits, and we'll take a few minutes to get used to gravity here in the reclining chairs that have been set up for them, and go through a few post-landing medical tests with their flight surgeons before they are moved into the medical tent where they can get out of their launch and entry suits that they're wearing and ready to return to Russia or the United States as appropriate. And as you can see, the crew now being moved into that medical tent. Again, they'll be able to get out of their spacesuits and ready for their trip first back to Kustanai and then on to their various homes. Kaplarov again there waving at the camera as he passes by. Followed here by Ivanishin.
Be careful.
And here, Commander Dan Burbank. This tent was carried by one of the helicopters and set up after they had met the Soyuz at its landing site for the crew to use once they had a few minutes to get used to gravity.
Кто в эфире? Что, упрел? Мне ПМК мешать будет, я не дам. Калинина включи пока.